Okay, good afternoon, everybody. All right, I can see the lobby is filling up. So welcome to today's webinar hosted by myself, Michael Petch. I am the editor-in-chief of 3D Printing Industry. And today's topic is insights and analysis and news from last week's AMUG conference in Florida. Now, if you're not familiar with the platform here, Remo does allow for a rather interactive event. So you're able to use the chat function on the right-hand side to say hello to the fellow attendees. And we're still seeing people joining. So that's fantastic. But also, you're able to use the Q&A function there. So if you want to click onto the Q&A function on the right-hand side, you will see there are a couple of questions I've already added. So here, you can tell me, did you attend the AMUG conference this year? So if you did, please vote that up. And if you didn't, then there's an answer there saying, no, I didn't attend the AMUG conference this year. Please vote that one up. Andrew, you're asking, you're saying good afternoon in the chat function, I've noticed. Sorry, in the Q&A function. There are two different windows there which you can use. And this, what we're going to be using the Q&A section for is throughout the event, anything you'd like to know from the panelists, please ask your questions there, and I'll be checking that periodically. And rather than waiting till the end of us talking, then I'll be taking these questions and posing them to the panelists as we go through. So I'll just let that poll run for a little bit longer in the Q&A there. But let's welcome our guests today. So guests, please, can you turn your cameras on and reveal yourselves? Fantastic. So these should be, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
So everyone, these faces should be familiar to our attendees, but in case they're not, we have Todd Grimm, who I'm sure if you were at the conference, you'll remember being on stage, and is also the president and founder of TA Grimm and Associates. We have Dayton Horvath, who is the principal at NewCap Partners, and Rebecca Fecteau, who is head of sales North America at BASF's Forward AM. Hello, everyone.
Hello and good morning, good afternoon.
Very cool.
Thank you for joining us today. Well, we're getting a few sort of results in for this poll. In fact, in this poll, I'm the only one who didn't attend AMUG this year. The three of you were all there, and so far our audience, majority are saying they didn't actually attend, which I think is not exactly surprising given the this year's event was rather reduced compared to previous years. And I think, Todd, we were talking the other day, weren't we, about this numbers, and the final official figures are not in, but I believe it's around about 1,000 attendees, 100 or so exhibitors.
If I can clarify that, so about 800, true attendees, full conference pass, the user kind of demographic, and about 1,000 total bodies. So that includes support staff from exhibitors and AMUG staff, so forth and so on.
Okay. But from what I've heard and what I've seen, because people were kind enough to share all sorts of photos and videos with me from the attendees and from the ground in Orlando, everyone did have a fantastic time. And I'm interested to really hear what is your general impressions of the event, Dayton? Perhaps you could lead with that and just give us a bit of an overview, and then we'll go around and see what everyone else thought.
Yeah, well, thinking about the trends and themes, this was my first AMUG. Very exciting. I'd probably sum it up in 4 words that kind of kept coming back throughout the course of the 5 days: open, industrial, production, and partnerships. And I imagine we're going to be seeing aspects of those throughout the next discussion here.
Rebecca, you were, did you get a chance to get away from the booth at all at BASF, or?
Barely, but there were a lot of conversations. Actually, first want to say, I don't know, Todd, maybe as a representative of AMUG, we made it. It was quickly organized. It went about as smooth as a wedding, which is that anything that didn't go right was minor. And the thanks that we got from the local labor, as well as the guys that build our booths at Impacts, they do all the BASF work. It was really heartwarming. I mean, they were saying, we've not worked in a year and we have an income again. And just like beyond everything at AMUG, that was a real highlight of the event. Beyond that, I completely agree with Dayton about industrialization, partnerships, and hearing people talk about something like polypropylene was really exciting to me because it is industrial. It means we're one step closer to industrialization and getting people out of their comfort zone of what they're used to.
I think a train just went past there, just as you're talking about polypropylene now. now, Todd,
you're one of my competitors.
must be, yes. In the chat, you're getting sabotaged there. Now, Todd, you're normally a fixture on stage, aren't you, throughout the event? So I'm not sure how much you get to see around the conference, but perhaps you'd give us an insight to what you did see.
Yeah, happy to, but you're absolutely right. So stage work, being part of the AMUG team, the role is to be host, make sure everything goes smoothly, everybody feels welcome and get conversations started. So my time really isn't my own. So honestly, I didn't even see a single booth on the expo floor. And I didn't sit in any breakout sessions because I was just running ragged. So my take on it is purely from the AMUG side. To build off of what Rebecca said, it was heartwarming just to see people smiling again and kind of, feeling freedom and then just diving into the engagement that AMUG's known for. So conversations were spontaneous. It took off like lightning, and the information transfer that we're known for was definitely present without a doubt. So for us, better than we could have hoped for the event.
Excellent. That's good to hear. And I'm glad to see we've got a few people attending today, because I know also after an event like the AMUG conference, it takes a lot out of you sometimes, and it can be take a little bit of time to get back to normality after being sort of always on and being so busy during that week. But the thing I remember about the times I've attended the conference really are those conversations you have with people. Just you're constantly under the same roof as the other attendees, and you really just get it. Everybody there is an expert. You're always learning something. I'm wondering, Dayton, is there a particular moment that stands out for you during last week where you had one of these conversations?
Honestly, two things. One was, some of the technical sessions. One in particular that comes to mind was one on FDA and regulatory practices, approvals that Dawn Lizzie had put on. I knew almost nothing going into that talk, and an hour later, I actually felt like I had a fundamental basis for what the difference is between the various terms when you hear about FDA approved versus certified and things of that sort. And it's that resource that you can go learn something completely new, or if you're still a novice, that's AMUG takes you to that next level. Whereas I feel like most of the other shows will help you get to that first level. And so, by users, for users really does make sense. And it was great to go to some of those. And then the other side was the non-additive conversations I ended up having, which, to be honest, I didn't expect that to happen, but there were probably 4 or 5 people I interacted with where, over the course of a 30-minute discussion, oftentimes in the middle of the expo floor, we started talking about music, about culture, about travel, and then we eventually found our way back to talking about additive in some way, shape, or form. And it was so refreshing because, one, I haven't experienced that at other events, but also we haven't really talked to anyone else in person in year plus.
Well, there's certainly a lot to catch up on. Absolutely. Rebecca, were you talking about music and culture?
I was listening to music and experiencing some culture, some tequila culture, but no, just joking. We were actually very well behaved this year. Like Dayton was saying, some conferences take you to that first level, and an AMUG kind of takes you above that. There were some great conversations where you're debating with someone who's been in the industry for 25 years, and it's like, oh yeah, this will never work because of blah blah blah, and as you engage with them, and you see the light click on where they say, you know what, I think this actually may work. And we had several of those conversations where it's that we have to think outside of what we already know. And maybe what we knew 20 years ago isn't valid anymore because technology is, increases, and other support systems, outside of materials and software. And the software portion was one of those moments where the lights clicked on for me, where we had several software companies approaching us as a material company to say, how can we work together? We're never going to buy your material, and BASF is probably never going to buy their system. However, it takes all of us kind of working together to create this solution for the end customer. So, okay, now we can build a CAD file. We have a material that works in a printer. And then, we talked a lot about post-processing, but there's still a step missing. How do you industrialize that? So that was really cool for me to open my eyes that, we're not done with our conversations yet. We've not yet put the full package together for our industrial customers at BASF to be able to adopt this. So that was really cool for me.
Todd,
if I can build off of,
yes, please.
Rebecca said debate. I agree with that. I'm going to offer one example, and then industrial. On the debate side, I called the question, not to say that it's not true, but I called the question in insights or trends across the globe, whether construction, buildings being 3D printed is has a strong business case. I didn't say I don't believe it. I just said I'm not convinced because I think there's more to the story. And the debating engaged. Three people approached me and came at it from the angle of it's obvious it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry in a matter of years and all that. But then another conversation, this actually happened at Universal for our offsite event. Two people grabbed me and said, you're on to something because we haven't conquered this, or that. So we don't have the whole story. And it wasn't a battle of I'm right or you're wrong. It was that trading of information and coming to a new assessment for all of us of where we really are and what needs to be done. And the other one on industrial, I had the regrettable duty of 3:00 on Thursday, which was our last day of running an open discussion or just a roundtable discussion on what is industrial 3D printing. As terminology, do we need any standards or certifications or qualifications to use that terminology? I was expecting 2 people and to call it quits early. The attendees didn't want the event to end. There were 30 people in the room and actively engaged in conversation about, do we need something there? Why do we need something there? Who should do something? And it's invigorating. It really reignites the life, the spark in you about the additive industry and what we're doing in it.
Yeah, it was sorry, Michael, just to add to that, sitting in on that discussion, I felt the forum aspect, how informal it was, how open everybody was with that common goal, granted different perspectives, different opinions on it, but you recognize that everyone was passionate and committed in that discussion. And I hope there's more forum type meetings at future events. I really enjoyed that.
I can add to that as well. Oh, sorry, Todd.
No, go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, so I regrettably couldn't be in your 3:00 Thursday session because I was in our own 3:00 Thursday session and had the same thought. Oh, no one's going to be here. I can't believe we got a 3:00 on a Thursday. and it was on our metal filament, and it was pretty full. I was really surprised, and not only was it full, as we were going through it and people were asking questions, and it was one of the smaller working group sessions, so it was kind of like this forum. I ended up pulling out my laptop to say, hey, you want to know the difference in pricing? Here's how you pull in a file, and here's what we can do, and then we can integrate in our simulation service. And by the time we left, we have 3 major opportunities with big name guys wanting to use this in their industrial production of things we would have never thought of. And I was just shocked that, wow, I had no expectations for this. I was really excited about the Metal Talk. And I mean, it was happening the entire time. Those like few moments where you're like, this made the show worth it. I was having those every day. And Thursday, 3 o'clock was one of those days. And I was shocked.
Anytime you can kind of have these opportunities, really. Yeah. Well, let's get a bit into, I want to break maybe down last week's event into sort of a trifecta, into machines, materials, and software. And in there, we're also maybe going to talk a bit about some of the startups, maybe also talk a bit about processing, obviously, as well. But let's get into some of the announcements, which I think this year they were a bit more muted, and I think vendors have been sort of not maybe sort of using forums like the AMUG conference to make the big announcements. But there was a huge announcement by Stratasys the week before, which is 3 new machines they added. Dayton, I was wondering what your thoughts about that announcement were.
Yeah, the announcement, which was very well televised and had a great virtual event, which I'm surprised actually worked. You could go in, you could talk to people in a way. Stratasys brought 3 new systems, one in the high-speed sintering category, similar to HP's multi-jet fusion. Hopefully nobody gets too mad at me saying that comparison. And the other 2, one was a standard, an FDM system, fairly large build volume, fairly low in price. And then the third was somewhat expected, the release of the Stratasys Origin 1, their DLP system. And I think what Stratasys has now established is that it's going to take more than just one technology category to be successful in moving additive manufacturing forward. Stratasys continues to be one of the leaders in the space, and they've shown that innovation can come from all perspectives, and that to achieve what they call production, it's going to take more than just one technology category. And I'm happy to see that, honestly. And I'm even happier to see that Origin is going to retain some of the open materials philosophy that has not traditionally been the case for Stratasys' filament-based printers. And so curious to see where the open nature of things is going to go as well.
Well, I don't think anyone can get too upset about the HP reference, because I believe Yoav Zeif on the investor call the other day also made a similar comment regarding HP. So yeah, they certainly are going after that similar category there. Todd, did you see anything which caught your eye in the machines and the printers section?
The hardware side, again, I wasn't on the expo floor at all, so it's osmosis, transfer of information by other people I'm talking to. But one thing I want to point out is AMUG tends not to be the launch event of choice for people unless you want to go after a very informed, tight-knit community. There's benefit there. But what we saw, hardware, software, and materials, was a lot of recent announcements than the first unveiling at AMUG. So companies like Masivit with move towards industrial, I found that interesting because for many years they went after architectural elements and point of purchase display, big statuary kind of things. Now with them coming back to industrial, they use their new 5000 platform to Lux XL or Lux Creo, I mean.
Lux Creo, yes.
Lux Creo, that was an interesting one for me. And I didn't see it, but I had a long conversation in the booth. And, it's DLP. They're pitching the smart factory. So that's all about, tight workflows, automation in that workflow using AI, machine learning, going after production. And they actually stood out in my mind because in the AMUG way, conversation with someone on their marketing team. And I said, what you have in print sounds like you've just parroted all the key buzzwords for success in additive. He didn't take offense to that. He said, what do you mean? I said, drop in production, drop in AI, drop in machine learning. Why should I believe that? And we talked, and he finally came out and said, our whole focus is production first. And then we support that with unique materials specific to the application and on and on and on. So they earned street cred in my mind based on that conversation. So if I were able to get to the booth, my eyes would have been a little more open to the positive aspect instead of looking for okay, this is just a clone. Let me find evidence of that. So that was something I was pleased to have the engagement because I probably wouldn't have given them the time of day.
Yeah, you really, it's so, I get what you're saying about it not being an event where the major announcements are, but certainly coming at from the journalist perspective, we get a little bit of a soft launch, if you like, and there will be the whispers. So typically in the trade show season, it tends to be the AMUG conference and then Rapid. Now, obviously, that's changed this year, but vendors will often sort of give you a bit of a insight of what's coming up at Rapid when they can do the big old curtain drop that everyone loves.
Yeah, some others come to mind. I'm sorry, Rebecca, please.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I agree with that. Part of it was the limited time we had to prepare. So all the effort went into the booth instead of collecting all the announcements. But we did use it as this soft launch, beta programs happening. So I completely agree. And, I also didn't see Lux Creo, which I wanted to get there. So that's interesting. Also on the machine side, I think similar to materials, I think there are options out there that we need to look at again as a community that maybe we didn't fully vet out where, like with Farsoon or an XYZ or Centium. Okay, they've been out there for a while, but I don't know that they've hit their stride yet. And they have some unique things that I think people aren't aware of. And I was talking to a lot of the machine guys about that, especially on the open side.
Todd, you mentioned there the Massivit, or Massivit, as I've been incorrectly calling the company. But there were also some other large format systems, weren't there? There were Titan Robotics had a launch. They were launching the Atlas HS. Did anyone get a chance to check that out?
I was going to leave this to Dayton because I didn't see him. So Centium, Titan, had recent announcements that were shown at AMUG, I believe, for the first time. But since I didn't see him, hopefully Dayton did and can offer some commentary.
I was able to make it by the booths, at least briefly. Visited Clay at Titan Robotics, and he showed me some of the parts that they were able to do from a hybrid perspective. It makes sense. When you're printing in larger format, especially pellet fed, it's much easier to go to near net shape than it is to go straight to a net shape, ready to go part. And given the DNA that Titan Robotics has, not dissimilar from DMG Mori, coming from a CNC motion control platform and recognizing that there's a benefit to co-locating additive and subtractive capabilities. And so even if there is perhaps a time delay in letting certain parts cool after being printed, you can still, you don't have to change build platforms, you don't have to remove the part, and then make sure that you're dialed in from a dimensionality perspective, and you can get to the type of surface finishes that you would expect from a standard end mill.
And that system, I remember seeing the one previous to this particular version of the Atlas. It's pretty big, and it's pelletized, isn't it? And they've got a heated chamber there, so it's really they're looking at lowering the costs of feedstock with that pelletized approach.
Which I support fully. I think there should be more pelletized systems out there. But however, there is still very much a place for smaller, more production-oriented systems. Rebecca, you mentioned Essentium. It might be time to re-explore what their offerings are. I know they had a competing announcement to Stratasys last week as well, and I don't think I've heard the term independent dual extruder prior to that around the proper system. So
okay,
that wasn't present, but I know they're going to have that full capability out for this fall.
I'm sure someone in the chat can probably correct me on this, but I'm trying to think of pelletized systems. Pollen AM, the French company, Wasp, the Italian company. I'm struggling to get past three, including Titan, but perhaps...
Hybrid Manufacturing Technologies has a tool head that can be retrofitted into CNC equipment.
There are others, but I'm drawing a blank too.
The chats are ever helpful. Arberg and Filament Innovations as well. Yeah,
thank you,
we've
chat.
got some very well-informed people there. And this is also just a reminder, you can use the Q&A as well if you'd like to ask our panelists any direct questions. We may not be able to answer everything, but I'll pose it out to the audience as well, because I know we've got some very smart people here. And Arif is asking whether they're going to do color printing at Massivit, or Massivit, I must start saying. I don't know if anyone has any insight on that topic. I suspect not.
I didn't have any conversations on color, so I cannot offer a definitive on that. But it's gel dispensing, so my assumption would be, at best, swap out print heads for another material. I'm guessing, so you get layer by layer color variation instead of gradient capability throughout a part. But I'm totally guessing.
Yeah, my guess on that would be, given the sort of background in producing signage, but often that the components would be finished in some way after they've been printed. So I suspect that they may retain that element. And Mark has just pointed out, yes, they have color models. It's called spray paint. Yeah, it's a much more direct way of making the point I was making.
Well, and also their focus with in industrial, the focus is more on patterns, tooling, bucks, concept models, replacing clay model for vehicle design, that sort of thing. So as I understand their intent in the industrial space, I don't even know if color would be a strong demand for what they want to go after.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into maybe the materials side. If we mentioned Essentium briefly. Do you want to go over Essentium a bit more detail, or?
The only thing I wanted to actually tie back in was that I did see a polypropylene filled with carbon fiber there, and I don't know if Rebecca, you had anything to do with that, but
I can't take credit for that, but I will welcome anyone helping in the polypropylene area.
and for clarification, why is polypropylene such an exciting?
Good question.
Yeah, okay. So here's where I'm coming from. It's the second most used thermoplastic in the world. And it's something that engineers are comfortable with, just like, automotive is big for BASF. They're comfortable with PA6 filled. They're comfortable with polypropylene. And so it knocks down one of the hurdles when you're trying to convert, I don't want to say convert a mindset. There is a time and a place for all technologies, all materials, and this is another tool in the toolbox. And to overcome some of the hurdles when going to a new technology, if you have a material that people are comfortable with, it's easier than having a new material and a new process. Now you just have a new process. So that's one of the reasons. Also, because we, we're making the polypropylene. We have the partnership with HP. We also have it for open platforms in SLS. We also have it for filament. We have just unfilled polypropylene as well as glass-filled polypropylene. So I really see it as a tool to reach more people. I'm sure my boss isn't on because I know he's on vacation, but after last week, he's now calling me the polypropylene queen. And I also love TPU and I also love TA6, but polypropylene is a very known material in the overall thermoplastics world. So you're just going to, I think, be able to get more conversion on the industrial side with something known.
I think maybe you're probably too young to remember King of the Hill, but I'm just now thinking of polypropylene.
I'm pretty old, I remember
and
it.
Polypropylene parts. Hank Hill saying that.
So my son, he's in kindergarten. I just have to say they had a recycling day at school, and the teacher was saying polypropylene, and he said, "Miss Flugman, it is called polypropylene." So he also hears me.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get a bit more into the materials there. On the metals side, X1 were showing off their aluminium. I think that's right.
Well, no, over here that's incorrect. It's
aluminum.
Aluminum.
Yes. Aluminum.
Todd, you beat me to
it. Well, it's called the Queen's English for a reason. I think you'll find it wrong.
Long live the Queen.
Yeah.
So I caught a good part of the X1 sponsored session on 6061 aluminum, and I think I'm a fan. I haven't seen it in person, obviously. The whole thing has to run under an inert atmosphere to be done effectively, but you don't need the inert atmosphere between the printing phase and the sintering phase. So in terms of transferring the actual parts. So I thought that was interesting, because not to get too deep into the metal side, but oxygen forms this aluminum oxide barrier on top of aluminum. And that's one of the biggest issues when trying to get to a fully consolidated part via sintering. And 6061 has been a bit of a holy grail in the additive world. We can't use laser powder bed fusion, and maybe it's time for binder jetting to finally have its heyday.
No, I agree. And what really excited me on that is the statement that all the test data came from Ford. So not to say that anyone's out there lying on the data they put out there for us to consume, but it gave me a lot more confidence that a 99% dense 6061 solution is possible out of binder jetting, with Ford being in collaboration and Ford producing those data sets for verification and validation. So not going to vouch for it, because I haven't seen it in practice, but it gives me a lot more comfort to further investigate.
Yeah, Gerardo has also pointed out as well that another tech platform, which is cold spray, is utilized by the Australian company Speed. I want to call them Speed 3D, but it's more like Speed with the with that 3 in the middle. They are also doing the 6061 as well, but that's a very, very different type of platform, cold spray, isn't it, compared to binder jetting. I think the precision is rather different. You're aiming for the near net shape type of components there, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. But can I go totally different route on materials?
So please do.
I had the pleasure of interviewing and presenting the interview of Dr. Hans Langer, founder of EOS, chairman of EOS Group, and some of the things they're working on. He gave us a little sneak into the future. He went on and on and on about materials that A, are customized for the application, and B, are manipulated at the microscopic level to create the characteristics you want in your part, and gave us all a really strong indication that that's where they're going, and they're actively working on that. So contrary, Rebecca, not contrary to what you said, but it's going to create a big barrier because now you have, if this comes to fruition, now you have an opportunity to do things that have never been done before on a new platform. Time will tell if people will invest in understanding how that process works, how to take control of it to yield, customized part formulations. And he's not talking multiple alloys. He's talking single alloy manipulated at a very small level, either the voxel or the microscopic level. So I found that intriguing in this conversation.
Yeah, and just to respond, Todd, like I said, there's a time and a place for each type of material, category material, process, rotomolding, injection molding, extrusion, FFF, powder bed fusion. So yeah, I think as a materials company, we try and be agnostic. We have a very broad portfolio. We go into many areas, including metal and polymer. So yeah, any innovation we're happy to see and we're happy to be part of.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other materials out there. There's a question that's kind of rising to the top from Yannick at 90 Labs, and he's asking whether there was any discussion around continuous fiber additive.
I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I don't recall seeing any technical presentations. I know Mark Forge was part of the expo, but as far as major announcements or updates, I don't think I saw too much at AMUG this year, at least in terms of continuous fiber-filled 3D printing.
Yeah,
I did run into the continuous composites team. I know they were present, but no major discussions or announcements that I can think of. Todd, did you have anything?
Well, yeah, just keep your eyes open for the field because I was pulled aside, shown a video, told some details in this category, continuous fiber. I can't share even who shared it with me, but I got kind of excited. I'm looking forward to learning more. So, yeah, we're going to see advances there also. But yeah, I don't think much of a conversation on the show floor at the event on continuous fiber.
Yeah, we had like the conversations in our booths about these soft launches. So for us on the metal side, we've expanded outside our metal filament from the 316L to the 17.4 pH. There were some announcements around partnering with Nexa. There's a few launches into their platform on the photopolymer side, as well as Origin, the Stratasys Origin announcement. But one focus we had, again, as a material company, we have a very broad offering, but there's still something missing to convert everyone to these other materials. So we're really focusing on how to enable that. And we looked at our simulation software. So we do computer-aided engineering internally. We've been doing it for decades on the injection molding side, now bringing some of those engineers onto the additive side, which can also help with things that just aren't needed in injection molding, like how to design and engineer a lattice. How do you upgrade foam? So we're not going to replace, just general foam. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say on a shin guard because anything's possible on the cost side. But on the performance side, there are so many opportunities. So we look at software and we look at post-processing. And one of the announcements from a post-processing partner, AMT, is that they can now smooth my favorite polypropylene. And now we are also in the beta phase of an adhesion promoter for hard to coat parts like polypropylene. So now that you can finish them better. We also are launching a flexible coating onto flexible substrates like a TPU. And I know some people are already saying, well, no, I can coat my part, it's just fine. When you go into the rigorous applications where someone is going to be looking at your adhesion, where someone is going to look at 100,000 cycles Rossflex, 1 million cycles Rossflex at extreme temperatures, it's not going to pass with a lot of the solutions today. And that's what we're targeting. So first is kind of the education. We have this broad material portfolio, and then it's how do we enable that? So through the simulations, through the post-processing, and now that other part that I have to dig into, how do we now partner with the guys doing AM workflow to integrate it all into one system, so it's a package that you can hand over to these big industrial producers?
There's a couple of things there. So just bringing what you were saying back to sort of Yannick's point about continuous fiber, and I think Dayton, you mentioned continuous composites. They recently announced they're working with Siemens on creating components for power generators, I believe. So there's something to be looking at there. But also on the post-processing workflow, Rebecca, that you're talking about, and you were mentioning post-process, an AMT rather, just then, but also Dimension made an announcement that they are going to be now a channel partner, will be available to channel partners of Stratasys. As part of that, they're building a sort of reference workflow where customers can get some more better idea about the costs. And I believe post-process technologies also were present, and they are working with carbon. In fact, is that correct, Dayton?
Yep, that's what I heard from Nate Harris over lunch one of the days. And it's interesting that these partnerships are now starting to show up between, call it the specialized post-processing equipment manufacturers and certain big name printer manufacturers. It's tying into a little bit more of that, call it unified workflow that Rebecca, you mentioned. I'm curious to see where that goes, and before I jump headlong into the software side of things, let's wrap up.
Yes, good idea. That's the thing. With only a short amount of time, it's kind of and so much going on. It's sometimes difficult to get everything in, and we are going to keep the networking open after the hour is up on the panels. If these conversations want to continue, they certainly can. So let's talk a bit more about some materials. Where would you like to talk about next, Dayton?
On the materials?
We've got Mech Nano. Mech Nano is an interesting
one. Oh, that's
one.
right.
Yeah.
They were not presenting at the expo, but they did have two lovely talks, I believe Wednesday or Thursday, put on by Dr. Olga Ivanova. I hope I'm not butchering the last name. I haven't seen much from the carbon nanotube, graphene nanoplatelet, nanomaterial side of the world.
Just for people who don't know about Mech Nano, because it's a relatively newish name, what's Mech Nano actually doing?
So they are pushing a functionalized carbon nanotube inside a standard 3D printable material. And the typical problem with carbon nanotubes, like many nanomaterials, is they agglomerate. They clump together, and you don't get the properties in the bulk material that you are hoping for with the famed properties of nanotubes and things of that sort. So they've found a way to functionalize the surface with other molecules that allow these nanotubes to remain dispersed. Their first announcement was a photopolymer resin, and the application there is for ESD, electrostatic dissipation or discharge, which is not very common in the photopolymer space, but we've all seen filled thermoplastics in the polymer extrusion or FDM side of things. So I'd say that was a welcome addition. I'm curious to see how it plays out, which groups pick it up.
Todd, you've met Olga a few times.
Yep, I talked with Olga a lot. So I did learn that instead of pronouncing a hard I, you pronounce it E. So I don't even remember how to spell Olga's last name, but I remember it sounds more like even, But anyway, key thing with what they're looking at also is concentration. So a small percentage by volume of these discrete carbon nanotubes can give the results in ESD, mechanical properties, and so forth and so on. So an advantage there is, instead of gaining in one property, and detracting from another. Like if you dump a lot of carbon into a material to pick up conductivity, they don't show that they have that trade-off. So keep what you love and then build on what that baseline is to enhance it through the discrete carbon nanotubes. So I find that interesting and believable too. Dr. O, as she's known, she's a straight shooter. So she shot straight with me. So really enjoyed that conversation I had with her.
There's a lot of mentions in the chat now for Dr. O. So
I would like to meet Dr. O. I tried so hard to make her talk because that is really exciting. You know, as a material company, what you can do to basically add value to your portfolio. So I'm very interested in learning about that technology. And if Dr. O is on, I'm stalking you.
Now, one thing for end users out there listening in, I don't believe a big portion of the business model is going to be to sell you the material loaded with these discrete carbon nanotubes. The primary model is going to be work with companies like BASF to R&D, the incorporation of those carbon nanotubes in their own formulations. So it'll be an indirect path for most users to see the effects of what Mech Nano can do.
Okay, one to watch there.
And we would love to hear any ideas of applications where, for any of the audience, where you think this could be of benefit, because it's always easier to have a more targeted project versus trying to hit a general audience. So really invite anyone to contact BASF that's interested in investigating the nanoparticles into a specific formulation.
Okay. We've got another one on the materials, Dayton, I think, which is the refractory metals, and H.C. Stark were out there. Can you tell us more about that?
That was well, after my own heart a little bit, because I've always been a fan of extreme material proproperties.
Who isn't?
You know, give me the unobtainium any day. And so to see, so refractory metals, tantalum, tungsten, molybdenum, and niobium are the four that typically come to mind. Very high melting point metals, very dense, and H.C. Stark has a long history in producing those for a number of industries, number of form factors, and they have done some work recently to commercialize metal powders for laser powder bed fusion in those four element categories. And it was exciting to see, you know, what are some of the difficulties that, you know, they've had to overcome from the laser powder bed fusion process, and what are some of the opportunities as a result, because there are some very, very interesting capabilities when you get into those heavier metals.
Anyone want to add anything else on materials before we go on to talking about software? Because I think we've talked about materials for quite a lot of time.
Yep.
Well,
I'm good.
Great. Well, let's get into software. Todd, maybe I'll come to you first this time. I keep going to Dayton all the time, and I know you weren't out and about on the show floor so much. But did anything in the software area catch your eye?
Catch my eye? No, you know, I didn't stop by the booth, but I did see a lot of activity around the Dendrite booth with the HP Universal Build Manager. So
Yes.
A lot of people wanted to get a first look at that. You know, they announced that working partnership, 6 months ago, 4, 5, 6 months ago. But I think for a lot of people, this was the first time to see it, touch it, experience it. And it, what I hear back from people is it really helped to drive home the point of what it's about and what it can do. You know, we had 3Your Mind there, Link 3D. So there were plenty of conversations, but nothing came my way that was earth-shattering, groundbreaking, and news that everyone joining us today absolutely needs to know. Although there is, you want to look at the chat there, we can tee up Rebecca here on the last question.
Yes, I saw that.
Are there any software? Is there any software being developed for predicting the shrinkage in metal binder jetting?
Yeah, I can say that BASF, I know, has software predicting the shrinkage for our metal filament. We probably also have data on, we have a metal injection molding business. I would have to check if we're doing anything on the metal binder jetting area. There could be, but for sure, I would think if we're doing it, others are doing it. But yeah, BASF Ultrasim software does do that. So some people will say, I know what I want my part to look like. Can you create a file so that it, whatever that file is, and as it prints, once it is out the door, it looks like the part I want it to look like and the size I want it to be. And yes, we can definitely do that.
And I think, it's been out for a while, but what's Mark Ford's package? Blacksmith, I think they call it. And they talk a little bit about, what's that?
Sure.
It is Blacksmith, yes.
Yeah, I think they talk a little bit about that. So where it stands and how good it is at predicting all aspects of it, unknown to me, but that is one of my areas of interest, because I think if we make the sintering process for binder jetting or anything that requires a secondary sinter extremely predictable, that unlocks the market potential. Because right now, as the question indicates, it's pretty much hands-on expertise to predict what's going to happen so you can compensate before it does happen. But it's also more elaborate simulation, because it's not just shrink. It's the effect of shrink if it drags on this surface that it's on. So you get, non-uniform walls because what's dragging is falling behind, slumping, and all those things. So I'm unaware of any really advanced research, but I suspect that it's going on, and I can't wait to see the day where we take that body of knowledge and turn it into a recipe that simulate, readjust your model, and boom, right into the furnace.
Yeah. One thing I just add there is, contrary to what I imagine is a little bit more of a figured out field, is metal injection molding and simulation around there. What makes it difficult in transferring a lot of that knowledge to sintering processes is the lack of pressure. When you think about those analogs and going from anything injection molding, whether it's polymer or metal, from a simulation perspective, it's much easier when you're thinking about, having the pressure of an injection molding machine relative to the open extrusion, or just, the only forces you have really working for you are gravity. And so to get comparable parts takes a bit more engineering and cleverness, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's why we had to take, so we have 30 engineers around the world that do simulation for injection molding, and they had to dedicate a team to say, okay, this is going to be different challenges. So they understand the core software, they understand our materials, but now they had to learn, what does this mean in additive? What does this mean for the different processes? Now you have, completely different parts you can build than in injection molding. So absolutely, you take maybe your core knowledge, but they had a lot to learn to be ready to simulate for additive.
Let's get on to just the other part of software, if you like, or another part of software at least, which is the MES systems. And a couple of names did crop up just now, which is Link 3D, Free Your Mind, or Fentize. I think were also
they were present,
also around as well. So this is a growing area. There's no real sort of, I think, Dayton, you were saying the other day, there's no real sort of leaders emerged yet in this space.
It's true. We have some of the more traditional manufacturing execution system providers, Siemens, Materialize, that have capabilities, offerings in additive, and then we've got a number of these new companies that have dedicated their efforts to a specialized MES system or other workflow type software, and they each have their own differences in how they think things should be worked through. And we're starting to see more and more partnerships. I know Authentize launched a big partnership with Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence maybe a few weeks ago was the first announcement, and then Link 3D has announced an option to be acquired by Materialize. So presumably there's some great collaboration that's been going on there behind the scenes. And the reason I think call it the old and the new are coming together is because additive is still a little bit of the Wild West from a software perspective, and where most groups think about MES traditionally, it's about scale, it's about consistency, it's about a glorified Excel spreadsheet, which, by the way, was still...
You're going to get a bit of hate now, I'm sure, in the chat for that.
Well, for the traditional MES, that always seems to be, how do you keep things consistent and straightforward? But when you've got a high mix, low volume technology such as additive, and then you're throwing in the entire discipline of material science and engineering on top of that, and you still want the qualification, data validation and traceability. Okay, now, the number of variables you have to keep track of, the number of factors that now have to be top of mind grows exponentially, and that's why I see, 3-year mind. I had a great conversation with Alex Donadieu. He was telling me about how they start with even the part selection aspect of things. And, I've spoken with Authentize in the past, and I think there's a really strong reason to have that simulation capability that Hexagon and, by association, MSC software coming in for the computer-aided engineering on the part simulation and even the process simulation, because your build prep and your slicing can't really be that effective unless you're dialing in what the effect of support structures are going to be, what the effect of that sintering result is, according to Todd, what you said. And so, yeah, we're still waiting on this whole workflow to come together, and I don't think any one group is going to own it, but I'm happy to see that there are groups innovating and pushing the bounds and trying out these bigger cases. I mean, you need to have a test case for additive MES software of 10, 20, 50, 100 machines, maybe a few locations, and then you start to understand, okay, what are the limitations? What are the high priority needs? So.
Well, for me, it's interesting, and I think it's also coupled with the post-processing companies as well. When you see MES companies growing, you see post-processing companies growing, you think, okay, well, are we getting to that stage where, to use that terrible phrase, industrialization is going to be taking place? And I noticed, Todd, you gave the international report on behalf of Stefan Ritt, who I think Correct. I have seen he's around, possibly in the chat somewhere. But one of those points you mentioned in that report on the reality check side is Industry 4.0 and those networks. And I think in contrast to some of the other areas which were showing green arrows going up, Industry 4.0 still flat, really, still a bit too early. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I'm reinterpreting Stefan's position on this. So we actually had an odd symbol for that. It was neither declining nor flatline nor growing. I use kind of an odd little flat line with a dip, so to indicate that it's not progressing. So flatline in Stefan's terminology. So yellow arrow on the horizontal indicates that steady state, about the same amount of R&D development and advancement. So this dipping red line was more of it's still not impressive. And yeah, he did point out that that communication standard is a huge issue, which I fully agree with. If every platform needs different data protocols, how can an MES solution satisfy big swaths of the market? It can't. So his point, and I agree with it, is, we need to move to the point of having standardized communication protocols for this really to pop open. For the end user, it means if you really need MES kind of tools and additive integrated into it, pick a very big player who has a big footprint hardware-wise in the market, and hope that they partner up or assist somebody who develops the software. Otherwise, if you find a specialized solution that, there are only hundreds of machines out there, you're probably going to be waiting a long time to get the solution. And
those standardized protocols, I think the UMATI one is one I've been looking at recently.
And Stefan mentioned UMATI. It's developing, but it's his, still needs work, according to Stefan on that. And Industry 4.0, just Stefan, if you're listening to this, sorry for putting words in your mouth, but still just a lot of words and nebulous. What does it really mean? What do we need to get there? And not a lot
nebulous, so it's cloud-based.
What's that? Cloud?
It's nebulous. It's cloud-based.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. It deserves to be nebulous, right?
Let's do a quick rapid round just on some of these questions we've had in on the Q&A. So, if anyone wants to take one of these in particular, please don't feel you all have to answer. The Massivit builds hollow and fast. How do you think this will play in the industrial space?
Applications where it's more of a form, geometry, or fit kind of need, not going after function. So you want a buck for laying up a carbon fiber tool or laying up carbon fiber. There you go. You want that clay model replacement, for auto body development. There you go. So I don't see being a production part solution or going after things that are going to take a lot of loading conditions or beating, but instead serving the market where you have big things that you need quickly is where they're going to play.
Desktop Metal, big growth plans for 2021. Were there any discussions around single pass jetting technologies, and any thoughts on that technology on SPJ?
In my realm, I didn't hear anybody talking about single pass jetting, or specifically where Desktop Metal is and what's going to be coming. Dayton, Rebecca, do you guys hear any?
No, but I wasn't looking at that area either.
Yeah.
No, nothing came up on my radar.
Yeah, if anything, with the recent acquisition, Envision Tech was the exhibitor. So if anything, all the conversations moved towards that Envision Tech acquisition by Desktop Metal and moved it into a polymer DLP kind of conversation at the event.
How about interest around bound metal deposition for industrial applications?
Is that there's so many trade names for the processes now.
Yeah. This is what Mark Forged is doing.
Okay, that's
Rapidia, Mark Forged,
et
cetera, and all, and BASF being a player and supplying the materials that are ultimately deposited. So I'm going to get shot in the forehead on this one, but I've never been overly excited about extruding the polymers filled with metals, because I just see time limitations there. And so product development, yes, but tooling maybe, or yes, but production, I really don't have high hopes for it until we can get some extreme throughput benefits, because with the process, you're mimicking exactly what you have to do in metal injection molding on the back end, what you have to do with binder jetting. So now you have a process that's slower, giving you a green body that then has to be brown body and then sintered part. And I don't see the obvious advantages other than an easy to use solution. And quite honestly, I asked X1, why in the heck did you partner with Rapidia? And
I agree on the easy access on the filament side, because if you can now throw this filament in an Ultimaker, or you can do it on just any desktop machine, so it is more access. I agree. It's not going to be pumping out 1 million parts a year, but it gives people that access to start using it, which maybe gets converted into MIM or binder jetting, something else.
Exactly, I agree with that.
Okay, look, we've hit the 1 hour mark, and I'm aware it's a lot of time just to stare at a screen. We're going to flip to the networking section now. But I'd really like to thank yourself, Dayton, thank Todd and Rebecca for really joining. And I've got a phone call. Joining at such short notice as well, and also so close to the conference itself. I know it's a very busy week, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to join here and be my guest today. So thank you very much for that.
Pleasure.
Thank you for the invite.
And also, there was a final question about medical in there. I'm sure there was a lot happening about that. So if you want to learn more about that, maybe there'll be a big chance to do that in the networking. Also, I'd just like to add, 3D printing industry is running a medical focused event in June on the 17th, where the topic will be regenerative medicine, and we have guests from 3D Systems, Cell Inc. and Lund University joining my colleague there to discuss that very topic. If you'd like to join that, there is a link there. In the meantime, thank you, and hopefully see you all face to face soon. For now, let's get on with the networking. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.
Cheers.